Alrighty, so today we're going to talk about Austin FC, aka Los Verdes, in the season preview and continue this Texas swing in the season preview because, the three teams that finished bottom of the Western Conference are all Texans team. And likewise, once we finish talk about the Texans team in the season preview, we get into the California swing because we get to talk about the two LA team and then the San Jose Earthquakes in the season preview. And those are, of course, the last remaining team that did not make it to the playoffs last season. I mean, it's quite hard to believe that literally the team that did not make it to the playoffs are from the state of California and Texas, and for the two most popular states in the U.S., and none of their team make it to the playoffs, and considering those states have so the most talented player in the entire region, it's kind of a bit shocking, the fact that none of those teams were able to make it to the playoffs in the Western Conference. Now, in terms of Austin, last year it was kind of, I would say, a very expansion-like season. Yes, I know the record is not pretty. I mean, 9-4-21 is definitely not a record that Austin would be very proud of in their expansion year, but it's kind of expected. I mean, every expansion team is going to go through this, and unless you're not named Atlanta United and LAFC, or in some extent Nashville SC, you're going to have a tough first year no matter what. And this is going to be giving some warning to Charlotte FC fans that maybe is watching this video to realize that, yeah, they're probably also not going to be in for a good season. But overall, they finished with 31 points. They scored 35 goals while conceding 56 goals with a goal differential of -12. And in their expansion year, at least they did not finish dead last. I mean, it looked like they were probably going to finish dead last because they were sitting at the bottom of the table for a while, but they kind of figure it out in the second half of the season, and that's kind of what is one of the things that I mentioned before about this team, where there is definitely a lot of positive, knowing the fact that, even though they only won 9 games this season, a lot of them came in the second half of the season, and this just kind of shows you that maybe they kind of got through those growing pains of the fact that, in an expansion year, you're trying to figure things out, and you, of course, are going to lose a lot of games. But once you figure it out, then the pieces have started to get going, and it definitely looked like the pieces were started to be in place for this Austin FC team, at least in the second half of the season. Now, in terms of players that they bought Hurricane Valencia from Deportivo Cali, and then they got Damian Last from Fulham U23. Then in terms of the interleague trade, they got Maxio Ruti from the Houston Dynamo, Ethan Finley from Minnesota off of free agency. Then they got Ruben Gabrielson from Toulouse. And then in terms of the super draft, they got Charlie Asensio and Kip Keller in the super draft. Now, the player that is departing this team, Ben Sweat, of course, departing to go to Sporting KC, followed by Ian Stanley going to Miami FC in the USL Championship. And then one of the more controversial depart for this team in the offseason is Mackenzie Gaines, not Glenn's there. And the reason why I say it's kind of controversial is the fact that they kind of left him unprotected in the expansion draft, and that was kind of a hot debate in terms of Austin FC supporter, that they were not happy the fact that the team did not protect him, and especially I think maybe even some that kind of got confused the fact that, well, how in the world is he not eligible to be automatically protected when he is a homegrown kind of player? But I think there's like a specific rule where I think Mackenzie Gaines wasn't actually like a G8A player as a homegrown, and therefore he wasn't automatically secure from getting picked in the expansion draft. But nevertheless, Charlotte, of course, picked him in the expansion draft, and he was actually the first overall pick in the expansion draft for Charlotte FC. And yeah, that's definitely something that is got to suck for Austin FC, and certainly suck for Mackenzie Gaines himself. I mean, here he is playing for his hometown team, Austin FC, something that he's been dreaming about, and finally gets to do so, and also scoring a goal last season, which, you talk about a feel-good story. That has to be just such a feel-good story with him. I think he even teared up when he scored that goal, because you just know what it means to him. The fact that not only he finally get a chance to play for his hometown team, but the fact to score a goal for your hometown team, what a moment was that. What a moment that is for that young man, and it's just kind of almost heartbreaking, the fact that in his first season with Austin FC, he's not going to be staying here, and now going to be moving somewhere else to Charlotte FC. Then they got Brady Scott going to the Columbus Crew, followed by Thomas Pochettino, who, he is definitely one of the more disappointing player and one of the more disappointing signings we saw last season. Although he is going to be only going on loan to River Plate, I'm not quite sure was there an option to buy that if Pochettino does well with River Plate could potentially buy him outright. But if there isn't an option to buy, this maybe is just a chance for Pochettino to kind of go back to his native country, trying to maybe get himself back in form, because last season I just feel like maybe the pressure kind of got to him. Like there was a lot of expectation that he was going to be good, and the fact that there's even some that compare him to be the next Diego Valeri, and yeah, that was not the case, but he still could be. I mean, there's potential that Pochettino has. I mean, I also say that there are some times where he have shown the ability to be a decent number 10, and I think there was like one game where he was able to score 2 goals and was able to really just kind of play out of his mind, and that we thought that was probably the moment when Pochettino kind of break through for this team, and no, it just turns out it was just kind of one of those one-off kind of good game that he has, and then he's kind of go back to his usual bad form. But let's just hope he does well now that he's going to be going back to his native country, Argentina, and playing for one of the biggest team in Argentina in River Plate. Then you got Ulises Aguirre, Kikuta Mane, both are free agent, and they of course had their contract decline when Austin made their season and roster move. You got a couple of retirement in Matt Beasler and Aaron Schumfield retiring from this season. By the way, I really need to do a career video about Matt Beasler. I mean, what a career Matt Beasler has had, and you know, even though his time with Austin was kind of cut short a little bit, and you know, Austin was hoping to kind of do what a lot of expansion team has done, which is getting some old kind of veteran player that maybe is winding down their career, but you know, it can definitely bring a good locker room presence, and still can be a decent job in terms of the back line, and it just never tends to be the case, because I think he only played like 2 games for Austin FC before he went down with an injury, and it seems like maybe that injury kind of forced him to retire, which I hope that's not the case, because with the career that Matt Beasler has had, that would definitely not be a great way for it to kind of close on the fact that he suffered a season ending, well, not just a season ending, but a career ending injury like that. But nevertheless, I'm definitely going to do a Matt Beasler career video in the future. He's definitely considered one of the best defender and one of the most underrated defender we've ever seen in this league. But yeah, besides him, you got Aaron Schumfield retiring this season, followed by Manny Perez, who was actually on loan with Austin from the Portland Timbers, but it looks like he's going to be going back to the Portland Timbers heading into next season. Now, in terms of optimism for this Austin FC team, well, they got through the growing pains of the first year, so you know, the fact that they are able to swallow through the pain and able to kind of swallow in a good way, because you know, when you look at this Austin FC fan base, I mean, I'm gonna admit that I was definitely proven wrong. The fact that, you know, I had my skepticism of the fact that this is not going to be a good soccer city, and knowing the fact that Texas is a place where you see attendance in the 2 other big city in Dallas and Houston, and how it's like some of the worst attendance we've seen in MLS, I have my skepticism toward Austin FC, but they really proved me wrong. Though I will say that in terms of the attendance wise, near the end of the year, yes, you started to see a little bit of some empty seats at Q2 Stadium, though it's not at a rate where I thought maybe this is kind of the time where the fans are starting to giving up on the team just yet. But more that I was kind of expecting, because maybe some of the casual fans kind of feel like, well, we finally get the experience of going to Q2 Stadium, and we don't really need to worry about that. And you know, I will also say that, you know, if this team does do well heading into this season, or actually if they don't do well heading into this season, it's going to really test whether or not if this is actually going to be a fan base that really support this team. Because, you know, it's one thing, of course, to support your team during your expansion year, because, you know, you get that expansion hype surround with the team. But it's going to be interesting to see, you know, through the first couple of years, whether or not if that fan base is going to continue. And I even said the same thing when Minnesota came into the league, and you know, as a Loons fan myself, I of course still stick with the team even through through the downtime that they had when they came into the league. But I was also impressed the fact that the fans still staying. Like, they gone through two really rough year, and yet during that second year, even though they were losing, there was still plenty of fans that was going to TCF Stadium to watch the team play. So it's going to be interesting to see, if this team does not do well this season, whether or not if that passionate fan from Austin FC will continue to attend games and continue to support this team outright. Because as soon as that's not going to be the case, then I think maybe there could be a legitimate argument to say that, yeah, maybe this was not a great idea, and it just feels like maybe that the reason why there was always a lot of fans watching this team play, and especially Q2 Stadium selling out day in and day out, is because of that expansion hype. But now, the other thing that be very optimistic for this Austin FC team is the squad seems to be much stronger and have a foundation compared to their first season. And this kind of started from last year when they did make some transfer in the summer window. I mean, one of the biggest transfer that I think is going to pay out for them is bringing Sebastian Giroussi. I have a feeling he is going to be the difference maker in this attacking end. But they definitely seem like the team got much stronger toward the end of the year, and also kind of have that foundation in the attack and also in the midfield. So that, of course, would definitely help this team, and especially, I know I said before that there's never guarantee the fact that a team can go on a hot run to end the season and that can follow into next year, but something tells me that could happen with this Austin team. I have a feeling they're going to definitely do much better heading into this season compared to last season when they finished second from bottom in the West. Now, despite that, there is still a lot of concern about this Austin FC team, and one of the biggest concern is the number 9 position. So there is a lot of number 9s on this team. You got Danny Houston, John Gallagher, Musa Jite, and then they recently got Maxi Urruti from the Houston Dynamo. And the question is, who's going to play in that position? Because there's a lot of option that Josh Wolf is going to have, but also, despite the fact that he has a lot of option in that spot, are any of those guys are going to be decent? I mean, Danny Houston, I talked about, he didn't even actually play for Austin FC last season because he went down with a season-ending injury, and he's also getting into his mid-30s. Musa Jite, as much as I praise how Musa Jite was incredible last season, there's been times where he has lacked that finishing skill, and that, if he can just figure out his finishing, because we know he is a decent striker and almost kind of like a winger too, because he is a very fast player, and that, maybe I would say that if Josh Wolf can't figure out who to put number 9, maybe they'll shift GT toward the winger position, because with that pace you want to put a player in that spot. Though the question is whether or not if GT will thrive in that winger spot, and whether being a winger is completely different than being a number 9, even if you of course have pace. And then of course the other guys that I mentioned besides Shite, Maxi Urruti, yes, he had an incredible season last year with the Houston Dynamo, but the question is whether or not if that's going to continue. And knowing Maxi Urruti, one thing I will say about him is that he's a very streaky striker. Like, sometimes when he is on good form, he's going to score the goals, but when he is not on form, yeah, he's going to have a long dry spell period. So that number 9 position is going to be something that this team's going to have to figure out, and I won't be surprised they might even spend some DP money in order to get that. And I forgot about John Gallagher too. Gallagher last season, he was okay at best. I mean, it's pretty clear there that there's a reason why Atlanta kind of decided to cut ties with him, because while John Gallagher had shown some good moment for Atlanta, he definitely was not the answer in terms of trying to cover Joseph Martinez, who was out all year with a torn ACL prior to last season. So yeah, we'll see again who exactly is going to be the main number 9 for this team. The back line, of course, still look pretty weak. I mean, when you look at this back line, there's still a lot of question. And for a team that give up 56 goals, yeah, I mean, I've even said last season, the reason why they give up 56 goals and not more is because Brad Stuver was playing out of his mind, though his form definitely did near the end of the season. But the fact that Brad Stuver kind of play out of his mind is kind of the reason why they didn't give up like 60 or 70 plus goal. And that also just kind of shows you that there's been times where that backline looks absolutely horrendous and kind of been non-existent. And the fact that they didn't really do much in terms of fixing it this offseason, yeah, that could maybe be a bit of a concern that this team could once again have some issue in terms of the defense. And they're going to have to ask Brad Stuver once again to bail them out in some of these games. And then, of course, the made in a and especially his substitute method. I mean, his tactics, you can see what he's trying to do, and he's almost trying to do kind of like a very Greg Berhalter kind of way. We know how Greg Berhalter and his tactics and doing his time with Columbus, making that team very successful and very fun to watch. Well, Josh Swift kind of tried to do the same thing with Austin FC, and unfortunately, you just know he is getting some more talent. We'll see whether or not if he will stick with those same tactics. And there's times where he can also be a little bit naive in terms of his tactics too, where he's not willing to abandon his tactics and go to plan B, which kind of reminds you of a certain head coach that is, remember how I said Greg Berhalter and how there's right now just an onslaught discussion about the frustration with the U.S. men's national team and with Berhalter not having a plan and stuff, though that's another discussion for another day. That is. Now, in terms of MVP for this team, there is actually two players that I would say is the MVP of this Austin FC team, and it's either between Jerussi or Alex Rain, but I'm gonna go with Rain because while Jerussi is very important to this attack, Alex Rain is the captain of this team, and he is the guy that I think will definitely protect that back line that, as I mentioned, is one of the weak spot for this team. And you can also see that when Alex Ring is at his best with this team, and I thought he had a decent season last year and definitely worth the $1 million that they pay NYCFC to get him. And when they didn't had him, you can see that backline was really fragile. So yeah, for him to really kind of protect that back line like he did last season, I think he's going to once again do the same thing this year, and that there's no doubt that not just only that, but I also could think that he could maybe contribute in the attacking part of the field, which I think that's kind of one of the reasons why I give him as the MVP, and not to mention he's still considered one of the top 5 defensive men in this league. Comeback player of the year. I'm gonna go with Cecilio Dominguez. And I would have gone with Thomas Pochettino if he didn't go to River Plate. And I probably could go with Thomas Pochettino next season when I do a season preview of Austin FC. But I go with Cecilio Dominguez because, last season, Dominguez, he had an okay season, though I know there are a lot of people saying that he kind of turns out to be a bust, especially with the way that he didn't really score as much goal and in terms of contribute on the attack as they first thought that when they bought him as a DP player. But I have a feeling this year he's going to be much better, and maybe this is just a case where Dominguez coming into a new league, he needs time to of course settle in, and that once he of course does settle in, he can be a decent player. And again, I think eventually Dominguez will live up to that DP contract because I saw what he did during his time with Club America, and there's no doubt that he can definitely bring that to MLS, and especially bring that to Austin FC heading into the second season. Now, expectation for this Austin FC team. Well, obviously the biggest expectation for this team is to win the Copa Tijas, and technically I should have said that as an expectation for the Houston Dynamo too, because for all 3 Texas teams, they're looking to try to win that elusive trophy, and kind of a trophy that maybe give them something to cheer about, because last season all 3 Texas teams being at the bottom of the table, I think FC Dallas was probably the more happiest team because at least they won some silverware, albeit it's only for a regional silverware. And for Austin FC, they've got to be very frustrated about what happened last year, not just because of the bad season, but also the fact that they lost out on Copa Tijas in that one game against FC Dallas. Like, if they could have just won that game, they would have won the first ever Copa Tejas battle between all three of these Texans teams. And then finish higher than last season. I still don't think this team is ready to be a playoff contender. Like, at very best, you know, when you look at this team, I would say they could be in the conversation of being a playoff contender. But when you look at the squad, as strong as I've said before, it is still missing some flaws, and that, you know, I still do worry about that back line, and especially, you know, I'm also worried about who is going to be the player that is going to be the goal scorer and the difference maker of. Well, actually, that actually is a department that I'm not worried about, because I have a feeling Jerussi will be that guy. But just the number 9 position, and not having a reliable number 9 to score you the goals, and also a back line that is very, very, very shaky. I don't think they're ready yet in terms of competing for playoffs. I think they'll probably maybe be ready next season, but heading into the second season, I think it's going to be another year where they're not going to make the playoffs. But they will definitely be better than this year. Like, they will definitely be knocking on the door in terms of being a playoff contender, and probably finish somewhere like 9th or 10th place this season. And also, not to mention the fact that it's getting harder than ever to make it to the playoffs, especially with the way that, you know, only the top 7 teams and only half of the team in each conference make it to the playoffs, and knowing the West have a lot of good teams that's going to be fighting for those 7 spots in the West, it's going to be even more difficult, and you would need every part of you to do well enough to get into the playoffs. And I just think for Austin FC, they're just a little bit short of that talent to really get over the hump and being a playoff team. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys do like, smash that subscribe button. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this video? And if you're a Verde fan, what do you think? You're optimist about this team this season, your concern, and most importantly, your expectation. What is Austin FC going to do in their second season in MLS? But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.